Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a very interesting week for the Philadelphia Eagles and a very interesting week in content creation. The NFL draft is officially behind us now, so now we have a picture of what this team looks like, at least on paper at the moment, before Howie Roseman decides to make any other free agent acquisitions. The Philadelphia Eagles in the 2025 NFL draft ended up with 10 new players on the roster. 10. A lot of draft picks, a lot of trade movement, especially in the later rounds. We picked 10 players, 6 players were after round 5. 3 fifth-round picks and 4 sixth-round picks is what we ended up doing after Ty Robinson in the 4th round. And, I think the roster breakdown and the acquisitions that have been made from the get-go have been consistent with what Philadelphia, Howie Roseman, this organization has been trying to tell us from the get-go. They've been very, very transparent, very, very honest, and I think the draft that they just had reflects that 100%. And we're going to talk about each player. Jihaad Campbell, Mukuba, Ty Robinson, McWilliams, Smael Mondon. Please forgive me if I got that name wrong. Or Smael Mondon. Again, I'm going to butcher that name. I apologize. Kendall, Kyle McCord, Myles Hinton, Cameron Williams, and then Antwaun Powell-Ryland from Virginia Tech, outside linebacker, as our last pick in the draft. And I'm going to go through some of the things I think they do well, some of the things that they don't do well, whether or not I think it's going to be able to fit on this roster, and how they could potentially contribute to what would be a winning football team. Because in the end, as much as we want to think 2025 is a season where they're going all in, I can't quite say that they're going all in, but they're certainly not tanking, and they're going to win a lot of football games. They're going to win 10 to 11 football games minimum, just based on the schedule. And whether or not you go ahead and win the Lombardi Trophy is one thing. Being a respectable team and being a double-digit win team and a playoff team is a whole nother thing. That's the standard, that minimum that you have to keep if you're Philadelphia. And I think this roster that they have building going forward is going to reflect that, and they're going to be in a better position in 2026 when they eventually, I do believe, go all in on that Super Bowl. So without further ado, we introduce the show. This is the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. I am your host, Asif Badi, and I am a Birds fan who talks about the Birds, only the Birds, and nothing but the Philadelphia Eagles. So do us a favor, help us grow this channel organically and be part of the discussion by shooting your thoughts in the comment section below, shooting this video a thumbs up, and subscribing to the channel, because it helps me get out to as many Eagle fans out there as much as possible. Also, check us out on audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and leave a 5-star review, because in the end, it doesn't cost you a damn thing to subscribe to an organic Eagles channel, and we thank you for your overall support on the opposite side of the camera. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we look at round 1, pick 31, Jihaad Campbell. Now, we had an episode about this immediately post-draft, and I thought it was a steal. And that's just based on the value that was projected by people, better people than me, who study and cover the draft. They thought this kid, Jihaad Campbell, would be a top 15 pick. He ended up falling to us to 31. And, we traded with Kansas City. We traded a 5th and a pick swap just to get the spot and secure this kid, that linebacker from Alabama. We all know the explosive playmaker he is. He's versatile. He could play edge. He could play linebacker. He's got really, really good ability to get off the ball. He blitzes really well. I think we see that on film. And it's something that, Vic Fangio, I think, really is going to appreciate, because he plays, the A-gap pretty well, right? Like, that's something that you want your linebackers to be able to do, to hit the hole and be able to stop the run in that sense. And he's a really, really good tackler. That's another thing that we noticed from Alabama linebackers, that he could tackle really well. And I have my notes here that he's versatile. He could play edge. He could drop back into coverage because of his athleticism. Plays the A gap pretty well, which also means he blitzes very nicely. And then he also tackles really well. Doesn't miss tackles. Um, that's some of the strengths of this kid, and I'm sure there's many more things. He's super athletic, really, really raw, young player. Played at Alabama, has the pedigree from a big time school and a big time program. Probably one of the last renditions of the Nick Saban era, right? So he has that sort of pedigree on his resume. And he, like, if you're from Alabama, you're from big football programs, you're going to go to the Philadelphia Eagles and be part of big games. You're probably going to start Jihaad Campbell. Like, that's due to Kobe Dean's health and what have you. This kid's going to get a lot of playing time, and how Vic Fangio decides to use him is going to be pretty interesting. People, label him as the Andrew Van Ginkel role, which would be pretty interesting. And if a young player like this has the capability of playing multiple positions like that, I think Vic Fangio has got a weapon on defense, similar to what Cooper DeJean brings, similar to what Quinyon Mitchell brings, how they're just weapons. Same with Zach Bond, weapons on defense. This is a similar characteristic of this kid. Now, some of the things he doesn't necessarily do very well is that, you know, playing against scrambling quarterbacks, he tends to go after them a little bit early, tends to drop out of his zone coverage to attack the quarterback, which is an aggressiveness that you really, really like. And it's something that you can coach in him to be a little bit more disciplined in his coverage and trust that the defensive lineman can contain. But he tends to kind of shoot the gun. What's the phrase that I'm looking for? Not overplay his hand. You get my point. He tends to rush things a little bit as a young player, and quarterbacks who have wheels. Which again, you got Jaden Daniels, you have a guy like Jackson Dart, Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, guys in our division who can run. Hell, even Dak. I know he's a traditional pocket guy, but he can run. And you're dealing with quarterbacks who got wheels, so you got to be able to be a little bit more disciplined in your gaps. Something that he can kind of work on. But he also relies on athleticism a lot and doesn't necessarily have a lot of technique as a pass rusher. Which again, not necessarily the worst thing because you have a defensive line like you have in Philadelphia. So in terms of being able to disengage blockers and stuff, not necessarily the thing that Vic Fangio is going to ask of a player like this. But I'm curious to see how this player is going to be used. I'm excited to see how this player gets used on the Vic Fangio scheme, because in the end, I think this is a steal with the value that we got him at pick 31. You get a player that's projected to be in the top 15, and you get a quality player like this in a draft that everyone believes you don't have a lot of blue chippers in. It's a damn solid pick. I think it's the steal for the value based on this draft. Really, really nice pick by Howie Roseman. The next player is going to be Andrew Mukuba, the safety out of Texas. In the second round, we picked him at. And the more and more I watch film on this guy, he just looks like he could play football, man. Really, like he just knows how to play the game. Again, another characteristic that Vic Fangio likes in a player is that he's versatile. A lot of the things that I read on Andrew Mukuba and what I watched in film is that he's really can play safety. He could play the run really well. He could play in the slot and play like slot corner in case Cooper DeJean has to get bumped outside if Keely Ringo or Adoree Jackson don't work out there. Really smart player, right? Like, I know he only had one interception in his first 3 years at college, and then he went to Texas and had 5 interceptions in that year. So take that for what you will. Could just be a hot year, or it could be a player that just has really good ball skills. And when you lose a playmaker like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and you bring in a young talent like this who's versatile, coachable, plays with his head, and is a ball hawk, you may that playmaking ability that we lost with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you may have gotten in this kid, Andrew Mukuba. Now, the only downside to him is, he's just a little bit of a smaller safety, right? Like, he's not necessarily your prototypical, box safety, even though he plays the run very well. But due to his size, you can't necessarily ask him to consistently play the run all the time, right? At least that's just for what I got from film. I know in college he was rated as a really good run player and he tackles very well, but you're going up against some big boys in the NFL and you got to be able to bring these guys down. You're going up against men. Being a smaller player doesn't necessarily help. I think this guy, Mukuba, is more of a replacement for Chauncey Gardner Johnson and maybe, just maybe, a replacement for a guy like Cooper in the slot. Because I have a gut feeling that by midseason, we're going to see Cooper DeJean playing outside corner. Because Keely Ringo, again, I love his physical traits. He's just raw. He's a raw player. And I think Vic Fangio doesn't really have the patience to sit there and let the kid develop unless he's coming out and playing really great football when he knows Cooper DeJean is right there. So again, fluid hips, really good in coverage, good ball skills, can cover a lot of ground, so he's quick. But he's just smaller. I think he's like 5. I don't even think he's 6 feet tall. He's 5'10", like a buck 90, right? Like a small guy, but has the pedigree of playing at a big school like Texas in a big football program that matters, right? Like I think those types of things matter. And Howie Roseman and this organization values players who come from big time programs and have that pedigree because you got to be used to playing in big games, right? You got to be used to doing that. You got to get used to playing against really, really high quality talent. So playing in the SEC at Texas does help. I think it's a chance signing on a player, but only because the kid's small. Again, like that's the only reason why. Other than that, if this kid were like 6'3" and he was like a 215-pound safety, you would look at this guy and say, holy crap, Howie Roseman just found a gem, right? Because literally outside of the fact that he's just a smaller safety, there's really not much to hate about Andrew Mukuba. He's really good, smart player. Sometimes he can bite on play action, but what safety wouldn't if you're running the ball really well, right? Like those are types of things that could be coached out of him. And I'm excited to see what this guy can bring. He may potentially start for us if we don't sign Justin Simmons. Now that I mentioned, Justin Simmons, don't be surprised if Philadelphia goes out and tries to sign a veteran safety, especially if this kid can get bumped down into the slot and Cooper DeJean hops outside. You're going to need a guy who can play safety. They're probably going to go with a veteran, whether it's Blackman, whether it's Simmons, for a decent price on a 1-year deal. Don't let the fact that we drafted this kid in the second round fool you and that Philadelphia is not looking at safety. I think they want to get some veteran leadership back there. But they got a quality player and potentially a Chauncey Gardner Johnson replacement in Andrew Mukuba. I'm excited for what this kid is going to be able to do going forward. The next player we're going to talk about is Ty Robinson, the 4th-round pick from Nebraska. Now, defensive tackle was an interesting position that I thought Philadelphia was going to try to address in the draft. And they certainly did it with a really young, capable player like Ty Robinson. He's a big boy. I think he's like 6'5". He's like damn near 300 pounds. Versatile player. Again, you saw in Jihaad Campbell, Andrew Mukuba, Ty Robinson, versatility, because Ty Robinson can play any technique along the defensive line. He can play the 0. He can go at the 5. Like the guy can really do it all along the defensive line. He plays the run really well, has really good gap discipline, which is important in a Vic Fangio scheme. And we talked about this before in episodes past. Having gap discipline is a major thing for Vic Fangio defensive linemen. So that's something good to see. We see he plays the run really well, potentially being a replacement for Jordan Davis down the line, or if Jordan Davis is not able to play on first, second down every now and then, you're going to put in Ty Robinson to kind of help with, supplement and run defense. And another thing about him that I think is underrated, again, Nebraska's a good, big program, but he also has a lot of college experience. He played in about 60 ball games in college. A lot of experience, a lot of games, a lot of been there, done that type of, vibe from him. And I think that's a really good quality to have, especially in a young player who just wants to go out there and play the game and isn't afraid of the moment. Ty Robinson doesn't look like a player that's afraid of the moment. again, some of the weaknesses that I think I saw in his tape was that he's not necessarily the best pass rusher. Now, I don't know if Philadelphia is going to ask Ty Robinson to be what Milton Williams was and be a polished pass rusher on the interior defensive line. Um, I don't think he's going to be a player that's going to be asked to deal with double teams because that's something that he also struggled with in college. Again, those are weaknesses, but in terms of fit for Philadelphia, if he's just going to be supplementing the rotation with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Moro Ajomo as an interior defensive lineman, I can live with the fact that the kid's not going to be able to fight through a double team at first. I can live with the fact that the kid's not necessarily the most polished pass rusher and he's just a bull rusher. I can live with the fact that, he, while he has all this experience and all this versatility, the motor is great, that, he could be a little bit more raw in his ability on his get off, right? Like sometimes he loses technique when he gets off the ball, especially in longer ball games. So sometimes he can play high, lose the leverage when you're attacking offensive linemen. That's an important bit. And in an NFC East, when you're going to have to go up against Dak Prescott, Jaden Daniels, and you got to go up against, Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, potentially Jackson Dart, guys who can move around, you got to be able to have gap discipline. You got to be able to, excuse me, you got to be able to not lose your leverage against these offensive linemen, because outside of Washington, it's not, I mean, Dallas got a really good offensive line too. These lines can be had on the interior, and you just have to be able to exploit the matchup. Especially if you're going to have Jalen Carter receive double teams, you got to be able to win your one-on-ones. Ty Robinson has the potential to do that. He just needs a little bit, brush around the edges, got a little rough around the edges, so to speak. So I think a little bit of coaching from Clint Hurt and Vic Fangio are going to help him on this football team. I think he's going to be a contributor for us. That's going to, be a big time performer in Philadelphia. So, very interesting pick. I'm excited to see what he does, especially for a round 4 kid. It's going to be pretty interesting to see what he does. Now we get into the back part of the draft here in, Mac McWilliams from Central Florida, cornerback. Smaller kid, right? I think he's like a 5'10" type of kid. I think he's, noted as a slot corner. The thing I like about him, one, obviously, again, if you notice, Central Florida, big time program, right? Playing a lot of big ball games, playing a lot against good competition. So that matters. He, again, due to his size, he has to use, football IQ and use his head in order to be able to keep up with a lot of the route combinations that are out there on the field. But he's really smart and he understands combinations. And I think that's such an important and valuable skill. And it's something that I appreciate because when you're a player who has a deficiency, but you're able to think the game and you're able to feel the game out and you're able to anticipate a little bit more what the opposing team's going to do, it just puts you and the rest of your team in a much better position. And, again, I played in a flag football league before, but it's one thing that, the defense that we played as a unit were really good at. We were really good at anticipating routes. We were really good at understanding route combinations, what an offense was trying to do. And we were able to stop a lot of good offenses, at least in our flag league, right? So when you see a player like this who has to use his head and knows route combinations and has to anticipate zones and has to anticipate, coverage here, for me, it's something that I appreciate a lot because I know the value in that, because that's something that I take my pride in as a player. I feel like I understand and have a good feel of, route combos in my flag league that I used to play in. And if you're able to do that at a college level, you could teach yourself to do that at the professional level. And that's a really, really underrated, valuable skill, despite the kid's size, because the kid's small. You could be really, really at a disadvantage physically, but if you're mentally there, in football, a lot of it's a mental aspect of things, you could put yourself in a really, really good position to be a problem for a lot of opposing offenses. So that's a nice quality to have. Aggressive player, really likes to attack. So a lot of his film talks about his ability to play up on screens and be able to beat some of the offensive linemen and really get downhill and attack the ball carrier on a screen. So that's nice to see. Again, heady player, understanding how plays develop. It's a valuable asset. But at times he, again, this is just based on film. This is based on draft reports that I read up on and what I saw on tape. Because of his size, he can get a little handsy. You get a little handsy in the NFL, you can either get blown off the ball by bigger wide receivers, because you're dealing with men, but also you can get a lot of flags thrown at you because of pass interference calls and a lot of holding calls, right? So again, something to keep in mind with the kid. Now, I'm not looking for this guy, Mac McWilliams, with all due respect. I don't believe he's going to see a lot of playing time this season. He's probably going to be a guy that you could just use as a bolt of lightning on special teams, right? So when you hear that he's an aggressive player and really likes to go downhill and is a heady player and understands combinations, not necessarily the best in man, but he understands, the game well and he plays zone. Those are traits that you look at and you say, okay, raw kid, has a good feel for the game, not necessarily the most polished player, but super aggressive. You could put that kid on special teams and he can make a lot of impact for you. I think that's where this kid's going to end up making the roster for. He's probably going to be a special teamer, and I think he's going to contribute really, really nicely as a guy, as a gunner, especially with like Sidney Brown out there. And again, if Keely Ringo decides to play, cornerback too, and he gets the starting gig, that other gunner on the opposite side becomes an available position, and this kid could be potentially a guy to get, that spot on the roster. So that'll be an interesting little development there with Mac McWilliams. Again, a nice 5th-round pick by Howie Roseman, and we'll see what he does going forward. The next player is the linebacker out of Georgia. And again, forgive me for mispronouncing this man's name. I really do apologize. Smael Mondon or Smael Mondon. Again, I am really going to butcher this young man's name. I will learn it eventually. But for now, I'm going to call him Mondon out of Georgia, the linebacker. Another 5th-round selection at 161 by Howie Roseman. Like I said, played at Georgia. He is a Bulldog, so that tradition continues in Philadelphia. The thing I like about him and the thing that popped off on tape with him is his athleticism. He is a really, really good athlete. And because he's athletic, he has the, an ability to go out and cover a lot of tight ends, a lot of, running backs if need be. He plays with his head on a swivel, so he plays coverage really well. He plays sideline to sideline. He's got really good hustle. His motor's really, really high. And again, when you're playing at Georgia, you're playing against some of the best players in the country. So that's another thing to kind of put a feather in your cap with. Now, this is not my description. I read this on a scouting report. He navigates traffic really well and has the ability to play downhill exceptionally, relying on his athleticism to make explosive plays. So that means deciphering screens. That means beating blockers before they are able to engage with him. That means, if we're playing man, being able to kind of traffic through like mesh concepts and be able to still cover the guy that you have to get. Again, a really nice ability to have, especially when you're, a player that's going to be asked probably to come in on passing downs. Like if he ends up being a player for the Philadelphia Eagles, he ain't starting at linebacker per se, but he's going to come in and, hey, we need you to cover this tight end. Go ahead and do it. He has the capability of doing that. I think that's something that Vic Fangio likes to see. And you could coach raw athleticism because that's what he's got. Raw athleticism doesn't necessarily have, the ability to go after the quarterback per se, because he's not a power guy, he's not a strength guy, he's not a pass rushing guy, but just a guy that can really drop back into coverage if you need him to spot for a few plays, he could do that. I think it's a nice pick for, a linebacker like this. Give, some of the other guys a little bit of a run for their money, especially like a guy like Van Sumeren, and when at least hold the fort down until Nakobe Dean comes back, maybe push Jeremiah Trotter a little bit, right? So that's another role that some of these players are bringing on, and we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit later as we get closer to the end of the show. But nice player in round 5. With that, let me grab a little bit of tea here. Damn, tea's good, gentlemen and ladies right there, right? Tea's very good. Another player in round 5, once again, is Drew Kendall out of Boston College. Now, he is a guard center combination type player. Now, I looked at some of his film. I like the way he plays football. I think he's a really good run blocker. I think he plays with an aggression that you need to go ahead and attack a defense. And again, when you're looking at this kid and you're looking at what Philadelphia is going to ask him to do, I don't think they're going to be asking him to play, traditional, guard and drop back coverage and all that stuff. I say drop back coverage, I mean like dropping back into into pass protection. I don't think Philadelphia is going to ask him to be a starting guard for us. I think what they're going to probably have him do is, be a viable backup for a guy like Cam Jurgens. Okay. I think that's kind of what this is. So I do think this kid can make the roster. I think, we saw what happened when Cam Jurgens went down. We had to put Landon Dickerson at center, and then we had to figure out what left guard was going to be. I don't think they want to necessarily do that. And besides, you have Tyler Steen on the roster. You have Trevor Keegan on the roster. Now you got Matt Pryor, Kendall Lamb on the roster. So I think they want to be able to just plug and play those guys at guard and kind of interchange them and keep, Cam Jurgens and just a guy like Drew Kendall there at center. Again, super athletic, has really good get off, plays the run really well. But again, he's a 5th round pick, so you're not expecting much. Comes from Boston College, not necessarily the most spectacular program by any means, but still a quality 5th round player, potentially could be a backup role. And again, when you got Coach Jeff Stoutland on the roster here, any lineman that you get potentially has a chance to make an impact for you. We saw it with Mailata. We saw it with other players like that later in the rounds. We're not looking for any miracles per se, but if you find a diamond in the rough, you find a diamond in the rough, right? So Drew Kendall's a nice little draft pick over there. This one is an interesting pick, this next guy, Kyle McCord, okay? And again, forgive me right now, ladies and gentlemen. It is very late at night. I watched a lot of film. That's why my eyes are so freaking red, and that's why I'm drinking tea. Stayed up really late to watch film on these guys, so forgive me as I'm, going through a little bit of something here. But Kyle McCord, quarterback out of Syracuse. Now, he was at Ohio State for a good chunk of his college career, and then I think his last year ended up transferring to Syracuse, and then he ended up setting all these freaking passing records at Syracuse at quarterback there. Again, pocket passer, not necessarily the biggest arm per se. He does have a lot of completions that are 15 to 25 yards for an intermediate thrower of the football. Really nice release, like super quick. Decision making is pretty good. He does eye down receivers a good amount of times, right? Doesn't necessarily scan the field per se, but I think that's because he's really good at deciphering coverages pre-snap, which is a nice quality to have in a quarterback, especially in a young one. It's because that's also showing that, yeah, he has physical limitations, but mentally, that's what you really need at quarterback. You got to have the mental fortitude and the mental capacity to be able to check out of plays, check into plays. And that's something that Jalen Hurts did on our playoff run. He checked out of a lot of plays and checked into good ones, right? Like you check out of bad plays, check into great ones to be able to win football games. Jalen Hurts did that a lot. So that's a quality that Kyle McCord has. I highly recommend anybody who doesn't know much about this guy to watch John Gruden's quarterback camp with Kyle McCord. You watch that and you're gonna like the kid a lot more. Like I was like, yeah, I don't know much about this guy, and then I watched the quarterback camp, and I'm like, holy crap, what a freaking steal that Philadelphia ended up getting in the 6th round. Do I expect this kid to be a starter for us in the NFL? I mean, for the Philadelphia Eagles? No, not quite. But you know what he can be? A really, really viable backup. And if he does have to step in and start for you for a game or two, he's capable. That's what you're getting out of a guy. He's a smart quarterback. Really, really good leader. Really good pre-snap. Accurate with the football. Again, does eyes down receivers a little bit. It's what you expect out of a 6th round quarterback. You're not looking for, Tom Brady over here. I mean, you are, but you're not expecting that. So take that for what you will. And he did set a lot of passing records at Syracuse in his 1 year starting. So the kid's capable. He's got a good arm. I like Kyle McCord. I do like him a lot. I like Tanner McGee. I like the quarterback room that we have in Philadelphia. So the quarterback factor that we talk about, it's looking like it's becoming true. Another 6th round pick is Myles Hinton out of Michigan, tackle. His father was in the league. I think he played in the NFL and was the number 3 overall pick, so he has some pedigree in that sense. Again, playing at Michigan, you played with Harbaugh, right? So you have a little bit of that NFL toughness, a little bit of that mindset to go after it. Really good run defender, plays both left and right tackle, which is nice. It's a versatile position. Again, kind of seems to be the theme here in this draft for the most part, versatility. A nice depth piece. Like I said, a good run blocker. I think he has a chance to make the roster as a tackle, like a swing tackle, Again, when you have a father who's been in the league before, it's not something that you just throw away to the wayside. You have to give the kid an opportunity and give the kid a chance because he might prepare a little bit better than most of the younger guys. He might understand the ebbs and flows of the game a little bit better. He's going to seek out his father and, ask for tips on what exactly he can do to better his game at the NFL level. That's also a valuable asset to have because now you have a sort of insight that other players wouldn't have at your position, right? So Myles Hinton, a nice quality player. I think a lot of Eagle fans look at him, and I think they're going to like him a lot. Even a lot of the people who I've seen analyze this kid really like what Myles Hinton can do. I'm curious to see what he's going to do for this football team. Again, probably going to play swing tackle for us, similar to a Fred Johnson role where he could play on the left or right side. Just, again, throwing a dart at the wall, throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing if it sticks at Jeff Stoutland University. It's not a bad take at round 6, picking 191. Couple more here, guys, I promise. Cameron Williams is a tackle out of Texas, 21 years old, 6th round pick. Super raw. Super raw. Again, playing at Texas, you played in the SEC. I think that's a valuable asset. I think that's really, really important to Howie Roseman and this organization and what other teams look at. Having that pedigree, playing against really big programs, and playing against really quality players, I think is important. And you watch his film, and yeah, he's got good size. I think he's a pretty big kid. He's like 300 plus pounds and stuff like that, right? So again, he's really good at the point of attack and run blocking. Really gets downhill, attacks the defensive line. Really good at getting to the next level once he's able to disengage from the defensive lineman. Just not a pure pass blocker. Again, that's coaching, that's technique. A lot of that's just reps, right? So in that sense, I'm not really too worried about this kid in the 6th round not being a fully polished football player. That's not what you're looking at in round 6. You're looking at depth pieces. You're looking at rotational guys. You're looking at people who can round out the roster for you long term, which again is kind of what this draft is kind of giving you a feel of. It's versatility and depth for the roster. And, when you're at 21 years old, you got a lot of potential because Jeff Stoutland University gets his hands on you early. It's going to play a big role down the line. And then lastly, our last pick in the 2025 NFL draft was Antwaun Powell-Ryland, outside linebacker out of Virginia Tech. Again, Another decent program, not necessarily the biggest program per se, but you're playing against quality players at Virginia Tech, right? Outside linebacker, pure pass rusher. Not necessarily a guy that you want to play the run with, but can give you a lot of versatility in terms of being able to get after the quarterback because he can play on either side. He can put his hand in the dirt, right? So he gives you a little bit of a different look every now and then. Smaller player, similar to like a Nolan Smith, Hassan Reddick type, where that size of player is something that Philadelphia doesn't necessarily shy away from as a pass rusher. They like guys who can use their speed and get around the edge a little bit, and that's what this kid can do. Really good at getting after the quarterback. Smart player, right? Like from watching tape, he's pretty good at deciphering what the offensive line does, how a guard pulls, where the gaps are in the defense, right? Because that's something that you get taught when you're playing football. You got to read the offensive line, seeing where the blockers go. It tells you what's going to happen on the play. Again, do I expect anything special out of him? No. More likely than not, he's just going to be a special teamer. Probably just going to be a guy that is on the roster to fill up some space, which again, quality career to have in the National Football League. There's only a few positions available on each football team. This kid being a rotational pass rusher plus a special teamer potentially, there's value in that. 100% value in that. And overall, the draft by Howie Roseman, but with some of the players that he's looking at, the type of players that he's looking at, you're looking at versatility, you're looking at roster depth, and you're looking at pedigree. A lot of these players came from big programs. They come from a lot of excellent talent evaluators. And they seem, for the most part, to be good, character guys, which is something that I think Philadelphia is starting to take a little bit more pride in. How would I grade this draft for Howie Roseman? I think I would probably give it a B-, considering that everything that he has done from the get-go is apropos and lockstep with what he's done in this draft. Again, I think there's only maybe 2 starters that you could potentially get out of this draft. And if you want to throw Ty Robinson in as a potential starter, as a rotational guy, because he's going to get playing time, fine. Let's just say 3 starters you're potentially getting out of this draft class. And then everybody else is really just a chance pick, a roster rounder, right? Like a guy to fill out some of the depth and deal with, potentially injuries that occur, right? And, you're taking some chance picks with like Cameron Williams and Myles Hinton and, Drew Kendall on the offensive line with Jeff Stoutland University there. I think that's a good, chance to take with some of these younger players, because if you can get their hands on them early and coach them up the way you want to, you're getting good football players out of this. You know what I mean? So Philadelphia, once again, played the draft well. I thought they did a nice job trying to round out their roster, trying to get the pieces that they think could fill out, roster slot 2, 3, 4 on certain depth charts, right? So overall, I like their draft. I gave it a B-, like I said. I think that's a fair grade for Howie Roseman and what they're going to do going forward. And now we're going to see what other acquisitions Howie Roseman is going to make in free agency. So I'm curious to see. I think they're going to go after a veteran safety. I think they're going to try to figure out a way now to extend Dallas Goedert, because I don't think they're able to find a trade partner for them. So they may work out a deal for him. And I think Philadelphia is in a position right now in which they are looking at 2026 instead of 2025 as the year where they're going to catch teams and be back in the NFC title game and Super Bowl, right? I think that's the year that they're trying to shoot for. And those draft picks, again, 8 picks were after round 2, right? And you had no 3rd round picks. You had a 4th rounder, but the rest were 5th and 6th round picks. So really cheap contracts, low risk, high reward type contracts, right? Getting them raw, young players under the coaching that you have with Vic Fangio, Jeff Stoutland, and some of the other guys like Clint Hurt, Bobby King, you're taking a chance on some of these guys. It's worth it. So, listen, that's all I got for the show today. It is very late at night, so I'm probably going to catch some sleep. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below in regards to some of the talent that we accumulated in this draft. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are and whether or not you think some of these guys are going to be able to contribute for the Philadelphia Eagles in this 2025 season. And I'm excited for what this team's going to be able to do. Now, the only thing that we have to do now is just wait and see what free agency brings on the second half before OTAs and training camp, because you get one or two more pieces, veteran players on this defense to round out this roster. All the talk about the drop-off that happened in the offseason, Howie Roseman and this organization might have just put to bed just a little bit.
Hey! Thank you so much for watching the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast. If you want to continue to support the channel, please hit the like and subscribe button down below. Also, check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Riding the Bench Eagles Pod. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're on there. Thank you so much for listening, and please join us next time here at the Riding the Bench Eagles podcast.